We are live, back in studio with my friend Dave and Coach at F45. This is episode, I gotta see what episode this is. I always mess this part up. Episode 28. We are brought to you, as usual, by SubZeroPlunge.com. Code BEBETTER at checkout saves you $250. It is my brother's birthday. He is the owner of the company. So for the best cold plunges you can buy, both sides of the Mississippi, check out SubZeroColdPlunge.com. They go down to 37 degrees. He also has ones that work as a hot tub as well. Has new ceramic tubs and inflatable to save a little bit of money. So if you're going to buy a cold tub and if you're interested in purchasing one, please check out SubZeroPlunge.com. Dave, thank you for coming on.
Tom, thanks for having me.
Dave, I've known Dave for, I don't know, I've been doing F45, the functional kind of training for probably not that long, 4 months.
Okay.
But I could tell, like, you were a little bit more my style because the trainers are great, but it's like you can tell people just jive better together, and you're kind of no bullshit.
Yeah.
And you put a lot of good, tips and tricks into the exercises. Like if somebody was struggling with a push-up, you'll tell them, hey, instead of going to your knees right away, do eccentric, then go to your knees and do like you could see things that I'm like, man, this guy's been around fitness for a very, very long time.
Yeah, long time. Yeah.
So how long you been training?
So probably since the 80s. I mean, literally since the 80s. I was kind of coaching people and training people right out of high school. I graduated from high school in 1985, and was always working out. And for me, I got into working out almost made the mental health connection as a teenager. My dad was divorced and remarried, and we moved around a lot.
Yeah.
And I discovered a set of I don't know if you remember the old DP weights, the cement-filled plastic weights.
Yeah. We had a couple of those in my basement.
Yeah, so with the kind of Allen wrench thing on it and stuff like that. So I had a 110-pound set of that. And once I discovered those as a 12, 13-year-old, I was like, all right, this is the magic.
Yeah.
It kept me kind of from putting my fist through a wall when I was, young and angry and stuff like that. So I've been doing it forever. Formally, in 1998, I started my first business. I was the director at Delnor for a little while, the fitness director there. In 98 and 2000, I started my first personal training company and did that from 2000 to 2018. And started with a motorhome. I had a custom-built Winnebago motorhome with a gym built in it.
Really?
Yeah. So
you just gut it?
No, I bought it that way. So my dad lived in Orange County, California, and we were standing on a cliff looking over the ocean, and I'm thinking, man, it'd be amazing if you had like a truck with equipment on tracks that you could pull out, do a whole workout looking out over the ocean, and when you're done, pack it up and go to your next location. Yeah. So it was a brilliant idea in California, not quite so much in Illinois. But I came back and I bought a 34-foot, what they call a commercial shell. So it's just a 34-foot, completely gutted, empty Winnebago, and you put whatever you want in it. So it's got a plywood floor, and I put a freestanding heavy bag. I got some power blocks because they're square and they don't roll. A clinical model of the Total Gym because you can do a ton of stuff on that. And some other things, some kettlebells and some weird little things like that. And I would drive around and I'd train people in their homes. I had some corporate gigs, and so I'd do stuff like that. And so it was kind of, it was cool being able to bring stuff to people, and I had tons of storage underneath. So I had I just drag stuff out, sandbags and all the rest of it. So this is back in 2000. The whole functional movement started in the late 90s. And that's when guys like Juan Carlos Santana and Mike Boyle and a lot of these guys who are like the pioneers of the functional fitness movement, they were doing this stuff back in the mid-90s. And so I had a lot of that kind of equipment, BOSUs and balance equipment, and I would drive around and I'd see clients in their homes, then come out and they'd train in the gym or we'd train out or in the motorhome and they'd train outside. Had some corporate things, but the snow and ice made it difficult to
liabilities and all that
they're just not great vehicles for that kind of thing.
Yeah,
the engine's in the front, so they're very light and very long for the size of them. So but I had all my graphics on it, and so I was written up in the newspaper a couple times, and we had this cool tagline, bringing a healthier life to your front door, and got a lot of notoriety from that, and then things just kind of exploded. But prior to that, I kind of did what a lot of guys did back in the 80s. If you were a bodybuilder, you were a trainer.
Yeah.
I was into bodybuilding in the late 80s, and if you had, muscles and, could talk about protein, you could be a personal trainer.
Yeah.
There weren't really any certifications. And so I started doing it way back in the late 80s.
Damn. Man, that motorhome gig would have been like probably a pretty good idea during COVID.
Yeah,
I mean, hit or miss maybe if people went to your house or not, but that's what everybody, like, we were talking that before we recorded, like all these people started building their home gyms, and I had people reach out to me that I never talked to. Hey, can I come train at your gym? I'm like, well, now you can't. Like, now you want to come? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like, I let some people in during the time just because it was weird time, so you didn't know what was going on until a little bit into it. But yeah, that home gym on the wheels, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it was awesome. It was what was cool about it was nobody else was doing it.
Right.
You know, that was the thing that I think made it really novel. And it was a high level. You know, the equipment that I had, I wasn't just bringing bands to people's houses. I mean, there was good equipment in there. That Clinical Total Gym was an amazing piece of equipment. It had a longer stroke than the traditional Total gyms.
Okay.
And I had all the gear on it, so I could do physical therapy on it. I mean, it was a really effective piece of equipment. But the marketing side of it was the best because it had all the graphics and stuff on the side. And it was funny, I actually ran into a guy who owns another gym, and we were talking a little bit, and he's like, "You're Dave the truck guy." And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Yeah, 20 years ago you came." He used to own a Gold's Gym. And he goes, 20 years ago you came and did some programming at our gym.
Really?
And I remember you pulling up in the truck. So people remember the truck. So it's kind of
it's
cool.
probably kind of hard to miss.
Yeah, exactly.
34 feet. Interesting. Have you ever competed? You ever gotten any competing of any kind of sort?
Yeah, so I've competed in strongman, I've competed in kickboxing, and I competed in bodybuilding. So, but at very low levels in all three of those.
Yeah.
So yeah, bodybuilding in the late 80s, and kickboxing through some of that time also, and then strongman a little bit later.
When did you do strongman? 90s, early 2000s?
No, strongman would have been, let's see, I'm 56, so when I was 30.
30?
Yeah, so 25 years ago.
What was your favorite out of the three, if you had to pick one to do?
Strongman.
Strongman? Yeah.
Nobody's trying to punch you in the face, which is good.
That is a plus, right?
You don't have to diet that much, so that's good,
that
too.
is also a plus.
You're never doing something for more than about 60 seconds, you know, so it's a lot of fun. So I love strongman.
Yeah, me and a couple buddies did one last fall. Just for like, man, I need to mix it up. And like, you know, there's so many different movements. And they gave us the list of whatever competition we signed up for, what we were doing. But it was just cool to train those different movements because I've been so much squat, bench, deadlift, super specific strength. So to do that strongman was like really cool because I'm like, man, this is like a cool atmosphere. I don't have to diet for this. I think there was a weight class, but I'm like, I don't even care what I weigh. I thought that was a pretty cool sport. If I was taller, I might put more effort into it. But dude, being short and being a strongman is so hard.
Well, they have some events, like some of the over-the-bar events where you have to pick something up and over a bar, and they don't adjust for height.
Right.
You know, and so there's advantages for some of the shorter guys. You know, they tend to grind deadlifts a little bit better, you know, and things like that. But they fail. And it's the same, like if you look at CrossFit's the same way. CrossFit has kind of, you know, cookie cut. They're athletes. When you look at them, they're all 5'10", 190 pounds.
Yeah.
You know, give or take. I mean, but
super athletic build.
Yeah.
Like nobody. I had a friend who did it who was like, you looked at him and you're like, you're too jacked for CrossFit. You're just like, you're too big. He was like 5'7", like 235. I'm like, dude. I mean, he made it pretty far into like the nationals and stuff, but I'm like, he had to get too gassed too quick and he couldn't keep up. Like all those guys are like. It's kind of like not a little bit similar, but like the Navy SEALs, it's like the big, strong guys don't make it. No. It's the guys who can move, or athletic, and just they don't have to have a strength as their primary focus.
Now, Grid League, I don't know, have you ever seen Grid League?
Mm-mm.
So Grid League is an offshoot of CrossFit, and what it does is they have specialists. So they'll have the calisthenic bodyweight specialist who does all the rings and handstand stuff. They'll have the monster who does nothing but the heavy lifts. They'll have the all-around, and so it's the exercises are set up in a grid, and the two teams go head-to-head, and they have their specialists in all the different things. So it's kind of a place for elite CrossFitters who are never going to really compete in the open games because of whatever that limitation is, whether it's height or something like that. They can find a place there because they have specialists in all those different disciplines. So it's pretty cool.
That is cool. What you said you are into men's like mental health, and you've been doing that since a teenager. That's where you found weights, and that's kind of where you got started. Do you do coaching for that now? Do you have on clients on one-on-one? How does that work for you?
Yeah, so I'm a licensed therapist. So I have a master's degree in counseling, and I'm a licensed counselor and a life coach. So I've done coaching and all that kind of stuff. I'm a certified drug and alcohol counselor, so I work with addictions. So yeah, I've been doing that since 2005, when I've got my formal training in the mental health field. And for me, it was, it's a very natural, and I look at, your videos and the stuff you post, and you represent kind of a growing body of professionals who are recognizing that, it's more than just the diet and nutrition. If we want to be complete men, we have to have the mental and emotional and the spiritual and all that other kind of stuff tied into it. And so, what I started noticing in my own journey, dealing with, some depression, some anxiety early on and stuff like that, some struggles with substances at some point and things, that if your mind's not healthy, it's very hard to get your body healthy. And if your body's not healthy, it's very hard for your mind to be healthy.
Right.
The two things can't work independently. And the opposite is true too. There's this incredible synergy when you combine mental health with physical health, so that you're not just kind of segmenting things out. And so what I do, I work out of a facility called Taurus Therapy in Batavia. I've got a private practice there, and I have a little gym, and I have a little office. And if you need one-on-one kind of mental health counseling and you need to sit on a chair and talk about things, we can do that. But we can also transition very easily over to the little mini gym area, and we can actually exercise. And what I've discovered is, people tend to loosen up. They tend to talk a little bit more freely when they're moving. I mean, you and I right now, this is a comfortable conversation, but when people are talking, kind of bearing their souls and stuff, a lot of times sitting face to face, eye to eye, can feel kind of intimidating. And so getting into the fitness setting, getting some movement, get a little sweat, working on a stability ball, or something like that, lowers the anxiety about sharing, intimate details about things, and people just really respond, especially young adults. Young guys really, tend to thrive in movement as opposed to sitting real stationary on a sofa and, talking about feelings and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I do. I'm trying to build more of a men's group there. I think there's a huge need right now. A lot of my male clients are dealing with kind of this, almost like an identity crisis. I think men are men don't really know what they're supposed to be these days. There's, they're getting attacked from all sorts of different sides, saying, you need to be more, sensitive, and you need to be more on this side. And then there's another side saying, no, we need to make sure we hold on to our masculinity.
Yeah.
And so men are just being pulled from all different sides. And the reality is, I think a well-balanced man has all of those things. There's a time to be sensitive and tap into more of your emotional side. And I think there's a time to be a little bit more rugged and a little more resilient. And I think that's something that I would like to help these guys, get in touch with.
Yeah, I see that too with some of my clients and just like friends in general. It's like you don't know what side you have to be on. Like if you're too sensitive and you're overly empathetic, maybe you're a pussy. And if you're too tough and rough and the loudest guy in the room, you're like, dude, you're too much. Yep. It's like and it's like, where do you find that balance? And I think that's what people struggle with, is like, where do I have to be? And I agree with you. Like probably 5 years ago, maybe 10, my early 20s, I always thought like the loudest, toughest, biggest guy in the room is the most alpha. And then as I get older and I meet more men, I'm like, no, it's not the loudest guy. That's usually the most annoying guy. And usually the most, if you want to call it the alpha in the room, is never the loudest. He's usually someone that's calm, quiet, speaks when he needs to speak, understands emotions, has empathy. But like so many people that line, they're like, where do I have to be? And I always say it like, don't lose your marbles. Like I always make the reference from Joe Rogan. He talks about Caitlyn Jenner. He's like, he had all these marbles. He was the best athlete in the world. And he hung around with all these women and he lost all his marbles. He goes, you have to keep your base of marbles or you're going to be a Caitlyn Jenner. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably true.
Well, and I think what men are struggling for is authenticity. Like what it means to be authentic to whoever they are, and then there's, again, there's pressure from all these different sides. But back to kind of the concept of the alpha, a lot of times the alpha is the most insecure guy in the room. He projects himself as something, but when you really get to know him, you realize there's a lot of insecurity there.
Yeah.
And, I think what men want is men want what everybody wants. Men want connection. Guys have trouble making friends with guys. And if they are friends with guys, they're drinking buddies or they're bros and stuff like this, but they're not talking about real topics. They're not talking about real pain and things like that. And men have pain, men have emotions. And so, getting in touch with this authenticity and say you don't have to give up an ounce of your masculinity to admit that something hurts, to admit that you're feeling some sort of pain or something like that. And being okay with that, and being comfortable with that. But for guys, it's very hard to develop those relationships. Women do it very naturally.
Yeah.
Women are much more in touch with that nurturing aspect, and so women tend to be more supportive of women, although they can certainly be very destructive of each other also. But guys just lack either they lack the training or they lack the confidence to be very open and transparent with other guys. We talk about surface level stuff that we know isn't going to get us in any trouble or something like that. When at the same time, I work in an addictions facility. I see men all day long. I run groups every single day of 15 guys from all walks of life. And I'll show you guys that are living on the street using heroin, and I'll show you guys that run billion-dollar businesses, and they're in the same space, and they have the same pain. They're experiencing the exact same things. And, obviously their struggles are differently. One guy's struggling where he's going to get his next meal, and the other guy's trying not to get, arrested by the SEC,
Right.
But they're experiencing a lot of the same stuff. And that common pain that men seem to have is the lack of true connection, and that lack of true connection comes from a lack of true authenticity, our inability to be able to be genuine and honest with other guys. And that not happening keeps us all working in this kind of very superficial realm of, chest thumping and stuff like that, and never really getting down to what we're feeling and what we're experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we see that a lot. Like, I have a lot of friends. It's just, how you doing? How's it going? How was the weekend? Like, you never really get anything deep. And then you have, like, probably just maybe a small handful where you can actually be like, yeah, my wife did this and now I'm upset. Like, but half of it, I think, too, is when I coach people or talk to people, it's like, me too. Like, dude, same shit, different story. Like, so it's funny that you say that you have the billionaire and then the homeless guy, where it's like, yeah, people just want, I think guys in general and everybody, you just want somebody to connect and be like, man, I'm not in this alone. Like, cause that's what it feels like sometimes when you have like your own struggles. You're like, dude, I'm the only fucking guy that has this problem. No one else has insecurities like this. I'm the only one. And you realize like, oh, everybody has this, but guys don't want to talk about it. I work in, I'm a lineman for a company up here, and we don't, not everything's surface level and everything's alpha and who's the toughest and who could do the most dangerous stuff half the time. And it's like, you're not, that doesn't make you more of a man, dude.
Yeah.
But talking, you can never really talk to those guys about it because it's just like, union laborers, you can't really bring that up. And I'm like, that's where I think where I can come in and find like some middle ground of being able to like talk to people to help them out, because people struggle and then they struggle at work, then it affects their jobs, and we do a job that's dangerous enough to kill you. And like, you can't think about that you're mad at your wife or somebody doesn't disrespect you and you don't like that while you're working with energy. You can't do it. So I'm like, man, I wish there was a way where I could talk to these guys and be like, hey, there is a middle ground. It's okay to feel some things, but we're not just going to be a bunch of girls. Like, not in a bad way, but like there is a middle ground. It's just so hard for people to open those doors because they've either never been opened or they were, usually everything comes from your parents, right? Whatever gaps they left. Now you have to figure out. And I try to explain that to some guys is like, hey, if I have a problem that Tom can't figure out with my emotions, empathy, stuff I don't understand because I'm a guy, I'm just going to give those problems to my kids. And I go, that's the worst thing you could possibly do is like, you know what? I can't figure this out. I'm going to keep being me. I'm not going to change. But whatever I didn't figure out, now my 3 girls have to figure out. And I'm like, that usually will change people's perspective a lot.
Yeah, I think that shows a lot of insight. We talk about the sins of the father being passed down through the generations, and it doesn't have to necessarily be sins. It has to be, just a lack of understanding or a lack of awareness or something like that. I'm very lucky. I grew up. My father was very affectionate, and so he never was withheld hugs and things like that. I don't know that I think he always believed in me, but he certainly never didn't believe in me, so there was never any barriers to things. I wasn't really held accountable for school and academics, and I did really poorly in school. So I regret that a little bit because I think there may have been some things that have been different. But in terms of how that then related to me as a father to my two kids. My two boys grew up with a father who was very open with affection, never hesitated to say I love you, and things like that. And so I think you're absolutely right that we pass things on and we have a chance to change generations. And our kids, well, your kids, my kids are grown. Your kids are growing up in a very different world where, when I was growing up, my sources of information were whatever I learned inside my house from the people in there and my friends directly.
Yeah, right.
Now with social media, there is so much misinformation being fed to young people from so many different sources that parents have to work twice as hard just to keep up.
Right.
And to try and counter that. And so I think that's one of the areas that parents today struggle in a way that I didn't struggle as a parent or my dad didn't struggle, that basically information either was received in the house or in school, but everything is face-to-face,
Right.
And now there's, this whole growth of technology that is making parents have to fight just to keep up.
Yeah.
I think that's challenging.
Yeah, I've talked about that with one of my close friends who we typically do this podcast together. He's off in he's coming back from China right now. His basketball team he's a head trainer for just got into the Olympics next year. They just qualified, so he's been gone for a while. But that's what we talk about too, is like, you're going to hear things at school, because his daughter's a little bit older than mine. So he's like, yeah, I just talked to him like, hey, you're going to hear things at school, and you come back and you ask us anything all the time. Like, this is your home base. There's no like I'll when my girls get older, there's what I'll do is I'll have them in my office and be like, you say whatever you want. You could swear at me. You could swear about your friends. Like, this is a safe zone, and you could say whatever you want. But here's our principles and our standards as a family. Mm-hmm. If you're a Kallas, this is our standard. And I learned a year or two ago, if you don't have your own standards, you're just going to fall to whatever, right? So that's why, like, okay, my standard is I'm training 5 days a week. It's not a goal. I don't hope to get to the fucking gym 5 days a week. No, it's your standard now. This is our standard with certain things in the media and what your classmates tell you. There's nothing below the standard. This is what we meet as Kallas's. So I think a lot of people lack standards, and a lot of people lack structure and schedule. And that's what I'm sure you give them a lot in your private practice. And what we try to do as well is, like, if you don't have any structure, you're just I don't know, every day you're free balling it. You're just willy-nilly doing whatever the hell you want. And I'm like, man, I don't know how some people operate like that. It's just like, it's almost like operating in chaos.
Yeah, I agree. I think, some of the most influential books, for me that I've read over the years was years ago I read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And it was groundbreaking back then, and it really hasn't lost any momentum. It's still one of the most significant books out there in terms of how to develop, a personal ethic like you're describing, where we have these standards. And Covey, he looked around and he followed the behaviors of the most successful people in the world, and he said, what do they all have in common? And he found these 7 habits, right? And so it's a phenomenal book, and it talks about the interpersonal side. So the first 3 habits are about how do I change myself and how do I work on me. The second 3 habits are how do I interact with other people. And then the 7th habit he calls sharpen the saw, which is this concept of continuous improvement. This book's 30-something years old. I think it's one of the most powerful books ever written. Today we've got books like Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is an amazing book. And so I think what you're describing, this concept of standards and then establishing routines, should be foundational. And some of us are real good at kind of getting kind of routines. We outsource a lot of it. That's why, going to classes like F45 can be very effective for some people, because they don't have to do anything. They got to show up.
There's no thinking.
Yep. Show up, do your best, go home. There's a schedule. Everything's on an app and all this other kind of stuff. For guys like us, I mean, for me, and then probably for you, I don't need a lot of motivation to get to the gym.
Right. No.
That's my happy place. That's my Disneyland. I need a little more help organizing my office, putting clothes away and stuff like that. So, I think first of all, everybody needs to have a clear understanding of what are they naturally aligned to and what do they have to work harder at. And if it's something you have to work harder at, you have to create routines around it. And the routines have to be ironclad. The routines become God, so that we're not relying on discipline, motivation, or willpower, which can be very fickle. We have a routine in a system, and we become a slave to the routine in the system. And as long as we just do the steps in sequence, everything tends to work out.
Yeah, I've always said too, I'm like, motivation is great. If that can get you up and get you out the door that day, it's awesome. But that's going to fade. I go, motivation's a match. I go, discipline's a candle.
Mm-hmm.
You have to use that motivation. Like, I'm all for it. I watch my David Goggins from time to time, get me fired up. I get it. But if you don't have that discipline to do the next thing on your checklist or write things down daily, like, everything falls apart, and you don't make it to the gym, and then you don't eat good, and you feel like shit, and then you're having anxiety, and you're having all these problems. You don't even know what to do with it because you don't understand it, because you haven't looked into it, because you're not set into a schedule. It's just dominoes.
Yeah.
Everything just falls apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back to fitness. What do you do as far as your training? Obviously, you coach at F45, which is a functional strength. I don't know where people listen, but it's a functional. They have quite a few locations now in the United States and then Australia.
Globally. They're all over. They're in Spain, all over the place.
But, I mean, you can describe that. It's basically just functional fitness. Total body, cardio, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, so, the whole functional movement started in the mid-'90s, and we went way overboard with it. People were doing, standing on Swiss balls, doing single-arm snatches. Yeah. Just it was like, how far can we challenge the body? And now we're realizing you don't really have to do that much. If you can stand on one foot and put your sock on, that's functional, right? And so starting to break things down into being less, exotic and saying, okay, what are the basic movements the human body does? We pick things up off the floor, we lift things overhead, we rotate, we stand on two legs, we stand on one leg, things like that. And what F45 has done really well, I ran one of the very first boot camps ever. So back in 1998, I created this thing called Operation Excellence Boot Camp at Delnor. And at the time, nobody else was running boot camps. You can look, and you won't really find a reference to a boot camp fitness thing prior to about 1998. And I was a fitness instructor in the Navy, and I came to the suburbs, and I'm in this gym, and I'm watching people, and I'm like, these people need their asses kicked.
Yeah.
They're pushing and pulling on machines with 5 pounds. I'm like, no. And so I went and I got my camis and all this other stuff, shaved my head, and I created this boot camp class. And people had to come in, and they had to stand at parade rest until I walked in the room. When I walked in the room, they had to snap to attention. They had to call me Mr. Bauer or Sir. There was a diet accountability where they had to report their diet, and if they screwed up on the diet, we called it a failure, and everybody got mashed. There was a punishment for it and stuff like that. It was the most popular class they'd ever had.
Really?
And what I realized, back then, this is back in 1998, people are hungry. I'm off the functional thing, but I'll come back to it. People are hungry for, they want that experience. They want to be challenged. They want to be pushed. Left to their own devices, a lot of people don't have whatever that is that pushes you over the hump. But the class was the most popular class they ever had there, and it was just huge. It exploded, and people liked the intensity, but they also like the discipline. They like kind of having that sense of, people were scared of me, and I'm the nicest person in the world, but people, they told me they were scared. So anyway, the functional movement started back in the mid-'90s, and then everybody kind of went kind of crazy with it. And what F45 has done better than anything else, and there are people that take F45 that were in my boot camps back in 98 in our
oh, really?
Our group.
Yeah, it's right down the road, right?
Yeah, so there's a handful of those guys. There's a guy in the 5 a.m. class who he's been taking classes from me for 20 years. And they came to F45 and they said, it's so much like your class. That's why they joined, because it's very similar to what I was doing back then. The idea of challenging the body in multiple planes of movement, which of course CrossFit does and lots of things do, but at an intensity that the average person can get into. There's not a lot of risky movements in F45. There's a lot of high-value movements. You notice that we do a lot of different variations, that we do a lot of deadlifting, and deadlift should be a foundational movement in almost any exercise program. It's the one thing we will do throughout the lifespan.
Right, you're going to deadlift forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I think they do very well at that. And it was funny because when I first took the class, so my wife signed up for it, and, I still see personal training clients and stuff, and I kind of was doing my own thing. And she said, you have to come take this class. And I went in, I took the class, and the first thing I noticed was, not that I checked people out, but everybody had so many people had great butts. And you can't have a great butt. I mean,
you can't fake that.
Deadlifting,
you can't buy that.
Yep. And I'm talking guys and girls. I'm talking like the men and the women. And I commented to her, I was like, something's going on right here, that everybody has, a great butt, because that's an indication of good squats and good deadlifts, And so I paid attention. I took a couple classes, and I walked out. I said, yeah, I'm sold. This is a great program. At least there's nothing better than that. I think CrossFit has some advantages because they do lift heavy.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really lift that heavy at F45 comparatively.
No, right.
We don't push people to 3-rep maxes and stuff like that. Although, there's some people that move pretty heavy if they choose to. Every workout, even the strength workouts, still are kind of cardio because your heart rate gets up.
Yeah.
So there's never long rest intervals. So you're not fully recovering in order to maximize, maybe hypertrophy or strength or something. But it's just a really great program.
Mm-hmm.
It checks off a lot of boxes. And I don't want to make it a commercial about F45, but my wife has taken all of the other the hybrid classes,
Theory
all that stuff. She's done all of it. She says nothing compares to F45.
It's funny because my wife, we used to go to this bar in Elburn, Schmitz.
Mm-hmm.
It's like our favorite little bar. We'd go there. We used to go there once a week when you had a babysitter, but she quit, so we get a little less time together. But the chick was a cyclist class, whatever those classes
spinning,
are. Spinning, and she tried that, and she's like, I can't sit on this fucking seat. It's killing me. She tried something else. She tried F45, and then she's like, Tom, you got to try it. I'm like, man, I don't want to do that cardio bullshit. Like, I'm not, like, that's not me. Like, I'm super strength specific, like squat, bench stuff. That's all I care about. And I was like, all right, you know what? My thing is, when I get comfortable with training, or with anything in life, I like to throw a wrench at it.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, cool. I got a really good schedule now for 2 months. What can I do to fuck this thing up? And then I'll be like, okay, cool. I'll do cardio 2 to 3 times a week. Instead of doing it on my own, because I don't really want to do running, I'm like, I'll do F45. And about every time I go to F45, I'm like, I don't even want to be here. Like, I just don't. Like, it's not my thing, right? Yeah. I'm not, you have all the old ladies not old, but, let's say 40 to 55 at the 5 a.m., like, kick my ass.
Yeah.
On a daily basis.
Right.
One of them specifically, same name, my wife, her name's Amber. I'm like, this chick, like, there's no stopping these girls. I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah, she's a monster.
Like, it makes me just feel like, man, I'm like, I got to really kick it into gear. So I enjoy it for the cardio aspect. Like you said, like the strength, it's not really a strength specific. And my thing is, I'm like, I can go there, I get my cardio in, I go back to the lab and get strong. I don't need that to get strong. So I do enjoy it. I don't want to make a commercial either, but they actually have figured it out. And I've been training for almost 2 decades now, and I'm like, actually, this is like a pretty damn good class, as far as strength and functionality and cardio. So, but what do you do personally? Like, sometimes we train together, but what else do you do?
So right now, I kind of go through hypertrophy kicks. Like right now, I'm a little bit more on a hypertrophy kick, so I'm trying to put on some mass. I injured my shoulder a little while ago. I've had this shoulder worked on before. And I injured it, and it's been a really, really slow healing process. So I've had to really dial things back, trying to hit things more like squatting more because I'm trying not to load the shoulder up too much. But now I'm starting to be able to get back into things. I usually do 2 to 3 days a week. I build into my workouts rehab work, prehab type stuff. So I'll do both my hips are artificial, so I've had both my hips replaced. I've had multiple spinal surgeries. I've had my shoulder redone, knee replacement is probably going to be within the next year or so, like that. So eventually I have to get my spine fused. My neck will eventually be fused.
What happened? Did you fall off a car or back of a truck? What's going on?
So, well, I mean, first of all, I think it's one of these blessings in disguise because I had my first back surgery when I was 15. And I started lifting weights, like I said, about 12 or 13 years old. And the way that I learned how to lift weights was I had an Arnold Schwarzenegger calendar, and I had it on the wall. And it didn't really show how to do the lifts. It just showed Arnold in some stage of the lift.
Okay.
And so my 12, 13-year-old brain tried to figure out, okay, how did he get the weight from point A to point B? And so I made up all these exercises, and I'd never seen anybody work out before. I just looked at the calendar, and I had a barbell, and I tried to move the weights around. And by the time I was about 14, I was deadlifting some pretty heavy weight. Now I was training at the Y with some big guys and stuff like that. I was wrestling. And at that time I was a little bit, and I still am, but I've kind of aged out of some of that, but I was very, very type A. Like I had to be the best at everything. And so, my back ended up paying the price for it because of bad deadlifting technique and then wrestling and then, dieting really strictly. I wrestled at 126 when my natural body weight would have been probably closer to 155.
Yeah.
So I was always starving myself. If everybody else ran a mile, I'd run 5 and just beating my body up. And so when I was 15, I had a herniated disc that they misdiagnosed for a year. And so the disc completely disintegrated. and then it calcified around a couple of the vertebrae, and so then there was some nerve damage. And you'll see, if you look at my right leg, you'll see my right leg is smaller than my left leg because I kind of lost the use of my right leg for a while and all that kind of stuff. So that was the first domino. That first injury set up all the rest of the injuries.
Yeah.
So had a second back surgery. I got into the martial arts, started getting into kickboxing because my right leg didn't work. I threw all my kicks with my left leg. Didn't do anything with my right leg, and that constant torquing on the right knee and then rotating the left hip. By the time I was 26, my left hip was pretty worn out. And I added something called FAIS, which is femoral acetabular impingement syndrome. So my left hip didn't work, my right knee didn't work, and I just kept on trudging along.
Yeah.
Kept pushing through the injuries. And when I was then I had another back surgery, and then I had my left hip replaced almost 10 years ago, so 9 years ago. I had my right hip replaced about 6 or 7 years ago. Shoulder done about 8 years ago. So herniated discs in the neck, all that kind of stuff. So
you're just trying to keep in one piece now.
Yeah, well, eventually I'm hoping science will catch up and I can actually really truly be bionic because I think that'd be pretty cool.
$6 million man,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. So
what do you? So you do a lot of rehab on your own. You have the gym at your facility, or you have some at your house?
So I also personal train out of. Can I tell a place where?
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
So Longevity Health and Fitness is in St. Charles. Dr. Rob Gregory owns that. I think he is probably. I'm not going to say the smartest, but he's probably one of the top 5 smartest people I've ever met in this industry. I mean, it's talking to Rob, I always say, is like drinking from a fire hose of information.
Yeah.
I've never met anybody who knows as much about human anatomy from both a Western philosophy as well as an Eastern philosophy. He's a licensed acupuncturist, chiropractor, medical massage therapist, former power lifter. So he walks the walk.
Yeah.
Very, very, I mean, he used to be an incredibly powerful dude. We used to have Atlas stones at the gym at his place where he has now, and 300-pound stone wasn't a problem for him. Now he's real heavy into mountain biking. He's trying to lean up a little bit, but he's one of the smartest human beings I've ever met about anything having to do with health, fitness, sports performance, biomechanics, all that stuff. So anyway, I train out of his facility, and he's got all the toys there that I could need for doing like rehab and prehab stuff. I do a lot of soft tissue work. I'd say the biggest thing that's changed in my training over the last, 10 to 15 years is my warm-ups rule everything. It's one of my biggest frustrations with F45 is the warm-ups really are inadequate, But my warm-ups, if I have 60 minutes to work out, I will warm up for 20 minutes. And I make sure that my body's completely ready to do anything. But then those 40 minutes that I have left are very, very high-quality minutes.
Right.
Instead of like the old mindset of bodybuilding where I'm doing the exercise to warm up for the exercise. I do a lot of mobility work. I make sure my shoulders are prepped, elbows. I'm prone to tendonitis, so I do a lot of that. I have I have a massage gun, a hypervolt massage gun, and I use that on different things. The foam rolling, all that kind of stuff, stick roller, lacrosse balls, all that kind of stuff. So that's usually 20 minutes before anything that I do. And then depending on what I'm doing, if I'm doing legs, I'll incorporate a little bit more mobility work to get my hips ready.
Yeah, right.
Because they're a little more at risk being, artificial and stuff like that.
With having that shoulder issue, can you put your hands on a straight bar?
So I can overhead press without hardly any problem. I can't press horizontally, so I can't really bench press. I can't really do a push-up without some discomfort. I can do close grip or neutral grip dumbbell presses, but I can't go very heavy. So most of my pressing work right now is overhead. I can't really do anything for the chest.
What about squatting?
I can squat.
Doesn't have no mobility issues grabbing the bar?
No, I mean I'll either go wide. At Rob's place, I use a safety bar. So I'll do that. That's the most comfortable.
You ever tried a Mars bar?
Which one's that?
It's like a safety bar, but on steroids. That's best way I can describe it.
Is it the one that goes like that, the cambered?
It's like SSBs like this. It curves over and it puts the bar in a low bar position.
Then you wear it like a harness almost.
Almost.
Yeah. I've seen those before.
Yeah, I have one in my garage. It's like probably the best. My buddy had a pec major tendon or the muscle. I can't remember. He got something. He blew out his chest benching at a meet, and like 2 weeks later, Mars bar squatting. Like didn't slow him down
because you don't have to use the arms.
You don't have to use your arms. Yeah, it's really nice. Like because half the time too, as powerlifters, like the whole thing was just straight bars, everything for the long time.
Yep.
And now it's like my elbows tendonitis. I can't do it. I can't do a low bar squat and then go bench heavy the next day. Like I just can't. Like they'll fucking be screaming, man. So I got into a lot more of like mixing the bars up and getting into SSB bars and stuff like that, just to save the shoulders and elbows.
Yeah, I think that's the risk with barbell work. For I was watching a video. Sergio Oliva, who was a bodybuilder way back from the 70s, and watching these guys do barbell curls, the arms flared out, and I was just watching it, and I could feel my elbows starting to get inflamed. And, but that's what everybody did. And then the easy bar too. I do almost exclusively dumbbell work now, except for squatting. Everything else is dumbbells. I barbell deadlift, but I do a lot of hex bar deadlifts as well. Yeah. I really like the hex bar. The traditionalists, I love the traditional deadlift. I think everybody should be able to do it, but I think for the general population, a hex bar is a pretty good way to go.
The trap bar, because you can, typically, I have an old school one here, but some of them are so nice where you can walk into them. Yeah. It's like half of a hex. I don't know how they design it so it all balances out. Big tubes, yeah, big tubes, and you could flip it so it's high bar or high handle, low handles. Yeah. And I'm like, that's what if you're generally functional and you just want to be strong, hex bar. I go, deadlift bar is great if you're trying to be specifically strong, but it's like to teach that. We have a online training company. We teach a lot of powerlifters and stuff how to train, and we have like how-to videos on how to do it. But it's like, man, you got to be really on your shit. Like people, I was seeing guys tear biceps, and like, well, the easiest way to not tear a bicep deadlifting is flexing your triceps. You flex your triceps, you can't tear your bicep. It's like impossible. It's like all those cues and stuff. It's like sometimes super hard to implement over online, and in person too. It's like we'll see like F45 does a couple deadlift, like actual straight bar deadlifts, a lot of RDLs. But it's like, I watch some people, I'm like, oh God, what are we doing?
Well, so they did last year when I first came on board, they started doing a thing on Sundays called Download with Dave. Mm-hmm. And so every Sunday I got to teach whatever I wanted to teach. And I took one Sunday to teach kettlebell movements, to learn how to transition the kettlebell overhead. And then we did one Sunday of nothing but deadlifts.
Oh, that's cool.
And for that very reason, because, you see people going, you see people with 10s going all the way down to the floor on an RDL, when you really don't need to come past mid-shin and things like that. So you see a lot of people doing things, and then you see a lot of rounded backs, and you see all these different things. You see over-under grip for submaximal, lifts and things. And I'm always telling people, build the grip, overhand only, and all that stuff. So there's risk there, and I think the other thing is the hex bar, it allows you to enjoy the lift. Without
it's more natural. Yeah, let's be honest. You pick up 2 bags of groceries, but behind the side of you, just like a hex bar. So. Yeah,
so you can do farmers walks with it, which is nice. So there's a lot of you can do static holds. There's just a lot of things that I think I'm surprised F45 doesn't use hex bars.
I know,
except for they're blocky and they take up a lot of space, and you can we get tight for space sometimes. Yeah. But yeah, so for me, I'm much more focused as I've aged. I'm turning 56 in 2 weeks. And so I'm much more focused on mobility. I'm much more focused on soft tissue. I'm much better at leaving my ego at the door.
Yeah, I'm sure that's hard.
It's very hard. Yeah. So, and at the recovery center that I work, I work at Recovery Centers of America, which is right over here.
Oh yeah, that one. Gotcha.
Yeah. And so we're an inpatient facility, and I built that gym. So we have a nice gym. We have 2 different gyms up there, and I got a lot of equipment donated from my friends and stuff like that. So we've got a pretty good gym up there. And of course, when I go up there, the guys are all like, "Dave, come, do something like that." And I'm, I've got to go and like dial it back because I do want to do, I do want to show off a little bit and do something. But that's how I always get tweaked. So, but soft tissue work, water. I think the biggest thing that's changed in my life is I'm much more cognizant of how much water I'm drinking. I've got my water bottle here, and so I try and make sure I stay with that. I don't do a ton of supplementation. I'm still a fan of creatine, protein supplements, things like that. Very big on probiotics. We're doing a lot more natural fermented foods. So we're doing natural fermented sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha. That's something I think is very important because of the gut-brain connection and things like that. But other than that, I think, there's we've gotten smarter in this industry, but, if you go back to the 1800s, there's some pretty jacked dudes who are eating meat and potatoes and lifting heavy things.
Basics.
And, and they had great mobility and they could do all sorts of stuff, so.
Yeah. What do you usually eat besides kimchi and sauerkraut?
So
What's your diet like?
So, back to what we're talking about with routines. My wife and I, we have a pretty consistent routine. I think the real secret to food is don't have a ton of variety. Make things delicious, but stick to a basic idea. So we kind of have a 4-day plan. We shop out for about 4 days.
Yep.
We alternate breakfast between kind of high protein, higher fat. So we'll do, eggs and bacon and a piece of fruit 3 days a week. And then 3 days a week, we do a very complex smoothie, which has Greek yogurt, protein powder, chia seeds, berries, flaxseed, natural peanut butter, almond milk, stuff like that. So 3 days a week is a shake like that for breakfast. 3 days a week is eggs and bacon with fruit. Lunches are usually salad. We stay relatively low carb. I do carb cycling, so I'll do carbohydrates more around my lifting, less carbohydrates the rest of the time. So we usually do a salad through the week, which is going to have, protein and then all the other stuff with it like that. Dinner is usually meat and an ample amount of vegetables. So we rotate between fish, pork, beef, chicken. Sometimes we'll do vegetarian like soy and things like that. But we eat plenty of meat and lots of vegetables, moderate amounts of fruit, moderate amounts of carbs. If we do carbs, we tend to stick more toward potatoes and rice.
More filling
like
for what you get too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As far as carbs versus how much it takes up in your stomach. Yeah, I always tell people, I'm like, you got to shop the outsides of the supermarkets.
Yeah.
I go, everything inside is all bullshit. It could stay there for a year and it's not going to change except for some dust. I go, you got to go to the outsides and just, like you said, keep it simple. Fruit, meat, eggs, bacon.
Yep.
Easy peasy.
All that stuff. And you have to enjoy what you're eating.
Right.
I think that's another thing too. Back when I was more into bodybuilding and stuff, I was definitely able to eat. I could eat a piece of dry baked chicken, 1 cup of plain white rice, and a cup of plain black broccoli. And I would do it because all I cared about was numbers.
Right, it's performance. Nothing else really matters.
Yeah, and my wife even jokes around sometimes because she's like, what do you eat? And I would tell her, numbers, baby, numbers. Because but life is short. Make it delicious. And the thing is, you can keep things pretty healthy with good marinades and stuff like that, and just make stuff taste good.
Yeah.
I'll usually marinate a bunch of boneless, skinless chicken thighs. I'll do a ton of those on Sunday night, grill them up, and we'll use those for salads throughout the week and stuff like that. Salmon, we try and eat salmon at least once a week. Stuff like that.
A little bit of everything.
Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to what my wife does. Like, we'll keep it pretty, like, she does a little bit more variety, but it's always like we're doing chicken, we're doing salmon, we're doing steak, we're doing, turkey, whatever, and she'll mix it up a lot. So luckily she cooks like almost about every single meal I eat. I don't have to cook anymore, which is nice. Because I was like you because I used to bodybuild when I was from 16 to 18. I did 5 shows, and I just kind of stuck with that mentality. I'm like, I'd have chicken and plain rice and broccoli. I would just throw it all on a fucking tray together or whatever, and I would make 6 meals, and I wouldn't even care.
Yeah, a little hot sauce.
Hot sauce or mustard, because mustard's got no calories, just sodium. Exactly. I'm like, I just don't even care. And then when I met her, she's like, what are you eating? I'm like, cold baked potato. I'm like, I don't really care. I go, this is not for fun. It's for performance. So she introduced a lot more fun style foods. We're actually like, this is actually tastes good. You can make things, and it's not. I did a lot of low fat, high carb meals for a long time. And so she's like barely cooks with any fat. Everything's replaced with like Greek yogurt instead of an oil or stuff like that. So she's pretty sharp in that. And luckily in the kitchen, she's got her shit together. What would you give advice for your younger Dave?
I'd say the first thing is movement prep. If we're talking lifting or just anything.
Anything.
I think. Well, we'll start with the current topic. I think with lifting, I think it would be movement prep. Focus more on really high quality workouts and not just volume and intensity. Really focus on quality. I think that would be a big thing. Nutritionally, I really wouldn't change much. I mean, I think I've pretty much been this way since I was about 15 or 16 years old. I think mentally, I think even now, even at my age, the buzzword, the thing that just keeps resonating in my head is this concept of authenticity. And even now, we still have this. I mean, you have a strong social media presence, and there's an aspect of what it means to be Tom. People identify with you. Muscular, the beard, all these things. And this is your identity. It's your brand. And so, and we're living in kind of that world today. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with that, as long as it's coming from a place of authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is who I am. If all the lights were gone and nobody ever saw me again, this is still who I would be.
Right.
You know, there's another very muscular, bearded guy called the Liver King who,
Mm-hmm.
you know, people called him on his bullshit. And now the guy's credibility is kind of shot. You know, his message was a little wacky, but some of it was okay. But it was kind of built on a lie. So this
Right.
idea of just being, you know, being who you are and being authentic to that person, you know, I think that's something I wish I would have learned a lot earlier.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, I ran a manufacturing company for a while, and I thought, oh, I have to be this thing and people have to see me this way. And I've wasted a lot of time worried about what people think about me.
Yeah.
And that's something that I wish I could go back and change that, and I can't even say that I'm perfect with it now. I still worry a lot about my image, and the reality is that, you know, all of my jobs, everything that I do, whether it's a personal trainer, coach at F45, or a therapist, I'm kind of presenting an ideal. You know, when I talk to my patients at the recovery facility, I teach them things that I think everybody should do. I don't always do them every day.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of this imposter syndrome sometimes and stuff like that. But I think that quest for authenticity is the most important journey that I think anybody can make, but especially men, and that's definitely one that I'm still on. I would probably, I would probably just worry. I would like to be. I would like to go back and make some better financial decisions.
Yeah, me too.
I think that there was. I love that big motorhome we were talking about, but that was $70,000 that I sold for $40,000. Now, did it buy me $30,000 of marketing? Probably. I sold it to a woman in California, which is the place to have those things, and she had she sat in her living room with a headset like these on, calling her 4 different vehicles that she had in their hair salons. She had 3 hair salon chairs in each one of them.
Huh.
So she hired a driver, and she rented the chairs out. So people were paying her rent in these things. The only overhead she had was the driver, the fuel, and the cost of the vehicle.
Right.
And they would go to Silicon Valley. And they would go to all these places where all the tech guys would crawl out from the basements, come get their haircut, and go back down. And that's
Smart.
all she did. That was her entire world. And she had 4 of these things. And she just sat in her living room, just ching, you know. So, yeah, I think I would have managed my money a little bit better, you know, to be in a slightly different financial place than I am now. But I don't have a lot of regrets. You know, I think I'm definitely living a life of continuous improvement. You know, I'm hungry for knowledge. I think that's one of the things that's accelerated as I've gotten older, is I want to know more. You know, I want to learn everything I can. I want to just, you know, I want to have as much knowledge to combine with experience to create that wisdom, you know. So I'm very hungry for that. Relax more.
Yeah.
You know, pet my dogs more.
That's funny that you bring up authenticity, because I just had a post about that. As like being authentic, because like you see so many things on Instagram, or like I knew guys like in person, and then they go on the internet and they're making like these crazy videos. I'm like, that's not you. Like, you don't even say these things. Like, you barely talk in person. Then you get a camera in front of you, then you're a different person. That's why I'm like, you may not see, because I don't really post about my family. I only post pictures I'll post of any kid is Haley, because she's 22, so she's old enough, right? I don't like putting my young kids on the internet. Like, you don't, like, you see like this much of me, and I go, that's me. That is me 100%. Like, you don't see my family. I go, but what you do see is me being real. I'm not going to do some skit or some trend. I'm like, it's going to be me. It's going to be real. And that's what you're going to get from me. Cause I've met guys in person at like the Arnold Expos and stuff like that. And you're like, letdown. Like, you are nothing like you are online. Like, why do you have to be a different person? I think some people do it probably just because the following, the likes, the little hearts, and that gets their, you know, serotonin going or whatever. But it's like, yeah, it's hard to find like real people, especially these days. Like, everybody's trying to be somebody. I'm like, you just got to be you. I'm like, I've struggled with that in the past before. Like you said, I can relate to you with, like, you know, people judging you, or, you know, how you want to be presented in front of somebody, and who do you want to be? And it's like, man, I struggle with that too. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to be the best Tom I could be. Whatever my standards are, whatever wrenches I want to throw in my plans to mix things up, to learn more, to be more educated. I'm like, that's it. And if people don't follow that, that's fine. Don't fucking follow me. Don't gain any followers. I'll lose followers. But I go, at least at the end of the day, I'm the same person I am today as me posting a video on the internet tomorrow. And like that is, I think, in these days, really few and far between. You know?
Yeah, I think you just hit on something I think that's powerful is you can't be everything for everybody.
Right.
You know, it's one of the things as a musician, you know, when I play out in town, I always stress out and I'm like, what if that person doesn't like it or that person doesn't like it? And recognizing, you know, Willie Nelson, who's one of my personal heroes, not a great singer, you know, and yet people love Willie Nelson.
Yeah.
So it's like, be Willie Nelson. You know, he doesn't have to be anything else.
Yep.
And so, you know, musically when I play out, I'm trying to get better about just saying, I'm going to play what I love to play, and I'm going to speak to a portion of the people listening.
Right.
And the other people might not be interested, and I'm not their cup of tea, and that's okay. So I think that's a big thing, what you were just saying, is you don't have to be everything for everybody. Be who you are, and your audience will find you.
Yeah.
You know, and then be authentic for them because those are the people who are already connecting with you. So I think
agree.
that's powerful.
I relate with that a lot. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, you play music. You play gigs all around. I mean, I don't know. I know you're playing around St. Charles. That's the only time I really
St.
see
Charles,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really. How'd you get into music?
Same time as I started working out. You know, those things happen simultaneously. It's funny because at the addiction facility that I work at, I'm the music therapist there, and I'm the wellness guy. And so stuff that I started doing at 13, where I started to recognize the benefit, I'm now actually teaching people about.
That's
so
cool.
I love that. Yeah, same thing. So I was a teenager, very isolated, you know, very insecure, and I would just sit with my guitar, and that was kind of like my best friend, and just play. You know, I didn't know I taught myself how to play, and that was, you know, I've just always had a guitar around me, and so that's always just been part of things. And I've played in bands, and I've done, you know, I played with a trio for a while, played with a bigger band, a rock band. But I really like what I'm doing now, which is just me and an acoustic guitar, and just trying to sing songs for people and stuff like that. But yeah, I love it. I don't know how to read music or anything. I regret that. That's another thing I'd go back and I'd say actually learn how to read music because, you know, it definitely limits my abilities. But yeah, I love doing that.
Yeah. No, you were actually surprisingly good because, like, you know, I don't know. You see somebody in a gym, you don't know if they're going to, like, this guy plays in a band or he sings by himself. I'm like, so we actually went to a couple of your gigs. I'm like, fuck, Dave's pretty good. I'm like, I wasn't expecting that.
Thanks.
You know, you don't know what to expect because, you know, you don't know what people are like outside the gym sometimes. Where can people find you if they want to work with you, get in touch with you? You be the therapist. How does that work?
So if you want to work with me therapeutically, I'm at Taurus, T-O-R-U-S, Taurus Therapy in Batavia. Very, very cool place. And we have both the therapy side and then we have the integrative health side, which is upstairs. So you can work with me kind of as a hybrid there. Personal training, I work with out of Longevity Health and Fitness. That's in St. Charles off of Route 25. Again, Dr. Rob Gregory. And then F45, of course, come in and take a class there. You can get a week for free and have a good time there. And then I'm kind of in the process of starting to ramp up and build more of my coaching business back. I had a coaching business for a while, and I'm trying to build that up. But you can find me at Fit to Lead 85 on Instagram.
Yep, and it'll be in that'll be in the description below too.
Perfect. So I'm, you know, and what excited me about this is I'm kind of, you know, about you inviting me to do this, which I really appreciate. Is, you know, I want to start networking. I used to be years and years ago when I had my first studio out here. I was out here in this part of this neck of the woods, and I knew everybody, and then kind of moved around a little bit, and kind of I've lost a lot of those networks, and the guys have gotten older and stuff like that. So, you know, making connections with more like-minded people who, you know, I think you have a very sincere passion for wanting people just to get better, you know, to be better.
Yeah.
And it shows in the things that you do. I think you seem like you're a kind person. You seem humble. You know, I think people looking at you might not know that humility is there, but, you know, you can tell it's there, and I think that's very powerful. And that's just the type of people that I want to be surrounded with more. I want to connect with more people like that and, you know, make a community, you know, that we can all kind of share ideas. And again, you know, what we started with was guys, you know, guys need more guys in their lives that they can be honest with. So, yeah.
No, I appreciate that. You know, I think you have a good gift to gab, that's for sure, and you have a lot of wisdom, and it's neat talking to you outside the gym because usually it's how you doing, what's going on, but exactly. You know, you could kind of tell, like I was saying in the beginning, like there was like, I'm like, I think Dave's gonna be pretty cool. Like there was a connection there. I'm like, I think I want to get to go know this guy a little bit more. So I'm glad you're able to come on the podcast on kind of short notice, and we were able to get this done.
This is great.
I appreciate you coming on. I'll put everything to find him in the description below, and then I'll see you at F45, buddy.
Sounds good, my friend. Thank you.
Be better.